Bravo!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's very nice to be back again. I was sitting at the back and I couldn't see you while the warm-up was going on. It sounded like 400 children trying to learn their first name. But anyway, never insult your audience in a speech, so don't worry. Could I ask, I've had the pleasure of presenting at Unleash events several times. If you've heard me before, could you stick your hand up, please? Okay, small smattering, good. Actually, there will be a lot of 80% of new information in today's presentation, but I'll refer to some of the chestnuts, the important things I think about. I'm going to look at Brexit, but Brexit very much with human resources and talent issues. And then I'm going to finish off with a corporate best practice. Because as some of you know, I work with 400 global corporations, 5,000 executives, and I've been in the business world for about 28 years. So I want to share some of those cliches and experiences that I have as well. I know the Unleash colleagues very well. I had lunch with them in Budapest a couple of weeks ago, and they said, Danny, for this speech on Brexit, you can provide a positive angle, can't you? And it was a loaded question, because what they wanted me to say was, yes, of course. So, you know, what I said was, yes, of course. But then again, I tell lies. By the way, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this clear. I never tell lies, never, unless it's in my personal, financial, or sexual interest to do so. So, you know, like all of you, certainly somebody shares my philosophy here. The other thing in introduction to the presentation, though, is, you know, talking about Brexit. In English, we have this phrase, you don't know what you're talking about, yeah? Excuse my language. You're a bloody idiot, and you don't know what you're talking about. That's, you know, pub discussion, yeah? Brexit, I feel much in that boat. Do I know what I'm talking about? With Brexit, we don't actually know what it is. We don't know when it will be, and we're not entirely sure it will be. So that's where we stand on Brexit at the moment. It was marvellous to see our Prime Minister make proposals recently after the meeting at Chequers, where, remember, the EU had said to Britain, whatever you do, don't cherry-pick bits and pieces that you want. So, of course, 2 weeks ago, we cherry-picked all the bits we want, you know. We took the caviar and the mashed potato we left behind. And the European Union said, they replied, you're not supposed to do this, we don't accept it, and it's not good. So with 10 months to go, that's where we stand. Whether it's going to be Norway or Swiss version, or more likely Canada plus options, and maybe yesterday you heard about that, it's going to be a rambling ad hoc free trade agreement. It seems unlikely at the moment, as I speak to you, that we'll be in the single market or the customs union. God knows if we're going to be in a customs union, which shows already the level of sophistication we're at on that. But to reach any of those formats, somebody will have to make major concessions on migration, the European courts and regulations, and Ireland. And we're not there yet. So if anything is to happen, either the EU will have to blink, or the United Kingdom will blink, by the way, as it has blinked already on several occasions. The WT option you all know about if we fall out of the European Union. It's not good. By the way, it's not good whatever we're going to get. Ad hoc, not bespoke, free trade agreement will be bad for the United Kingdom. Now, I'm going to jump into a little part of the economy. I am pretty agnostic about the Brexit because I understand where we came from, and I'll describe that in a minute. But where we're going, the argument at the moment is, if you read certain of the British press, Britain's doing quite well economically now, yeah, with Brexit. There is a technical point. We're not actually out of the European Union yet. You know, we're in the European Union. We had a relatively devalued pound, which is creeping back up. So we had the benefits of being in the European Union, having a devalued currency, and so on. However, I'm sure you all know, Investment is starting to flag. We're seeing companies, and you must be seeing this, some of the big and mid-sized ones, they're readjusting their business strategy. They're moving little bits of their corporations and planning to move. And when they're looking at hiring people moving forward, they're thinking less of hiring in the UK and thinking we want European Union people in Europe, or we'll take Brits if they're in Europe as well. That will inevitably be part of the strategy. The key thing, though, is that consumer confidence has started to slip, which is understandable, and retail sales are being devastated across Britain. By the way, Jamie Oliver's restaurants are starting to close, so it's getting very, very serious. By the way, you do know that's a sectoral problem as well, but Jamie has some problems as well. The point is, though, real wages. Real wages, I've talked about this before, one of the most important indicators for jobs and society and everything. Real wages is your nominal wage minus inflation, because that's what you've really got as a benefit. I've said in my presentations before, and I'll go to the background of Brexit now, actually. Real wages in the United Kingdom from 2010 to 2015 were the worst since the bubonic plague in 1348. Real wages in the United Kingdom. That's how bad they were. They picked up a little bit in 2016 because inflation was very low. And in 17 and 18, real wages again are turning negative. And they will stay flat negative for several years to come because Brexit means slightly higher inflation, and it certainly probably doesn't mean overall higher nominal wages. So real wages were the worst for 500-600 years. They had a 12-month good period, and now blue-collar, white-collar, and especially blue-collar workers in the United Kingdom are going to suffer from that. When you think of what it means for disposable income in the United Kingdom as well, did you know? By the way, the average wage in Britain, I don't know if you know the average wage in Britain, it's about £25,000 before tax. And then you can work out the monthly and then think about what disposable income is. In the United Kingdom, for your average wage, you would spend 47% of it renting property in the United Kingdom. 47% of your income goes that way. If you're living in London, then it would be 77% of your disposable income, average income, renting a one-bedroom studio in central London. The good thing about central London is no normal human beings live there, so that's good. Certainly no British people live there. It's Russians, Chinese, Nigerians, Arab visitors who buy the property. It's good. I was walking through central London the other week, and I met an Englishman, and we had a chat, and we felt very, very good about it. But really, no normal human beings can afford property in downtown central London. But the point I make there is about disposable income. If disposable income and real wages are so tight, then we certainly have some issues. Just on the introduction to that, on where we are with the British job outlook, I've looked at this before. 75% of jobs in the United Kingdom since 2007 stem from self-employment or part-time work. 75% since 2007. So that's the last decade. What we've got in the United Kingdom and in the United States of America is the gig economy, part-time work, and low real wages. The view that you go into the gig economy and you've got massive flexibility and freedom in this, I think is a misconception. I did say recently there was a massive survey in Europe, including UK, of young people who were in the gig economy. And 50% of them were quite happy with being in it because of flexibility and so on. By the way, that means that 50% are not happy being in the gig economy. But I think those who are in the gig economy have false consciousness. They don't understand what their best interests are. It's insecurity. It's low wages, because if you're in the gig economy, you certainly have lower wages than you do in the real economy. In addition to austerity, gig economy, low real wages, we had the perception of migration, and I believe that the speaker yesterday talked about the anti-globalization. So put the perception of uncontrolled migration, I use the word perception of uncontrolled migration, put that with austerity, put that with elitism, corruption, and so on, and you get a time bomb, which we had in June of 2016. We see many similarities in the United States with Brexit, and in Italy with the recent populist tide we have there. Moving, though, from those big picture things to what I think could be happening, some aspects of human resources in the United Kingdom after this. I think, first of all, salaries, there'll be pressure, right, supply. The supply of people, presumably, and the supply of people that you want, presumably, will be less than before. And it will be more difficult to acquire them, and your administrative costs and other costs will rise to take on those people. So the supply of talent and human resources that you need, by how much will it decline? Well, sorry, I have no idea. But let's say the supply diminishes by 5–15%. I don't know. That's a guess. So supply down by 5–15% for a tighter market. However, the reverse of that is, I think, the consensus is, we're going to have a weaker economy. So if there's a weaker economy, then there'll be a bit less demand for workers, HR, and so on. How much? I don't know. I don't think the economy is going to be catastrophic, but I think it's going to be a slower economy for the next 3–5 years. So let's say the demand for workers is down by 5%. Sorry, I'm making these numbers up. But let's say, the demand is down 5, but the supply is down 10–15, so there is a gap. There must be a gap of talent and human resources that you need moving forward. So, in summary, what I'm saying there, Brexit will mean a tighter labour pool, but combined with a weaker economy. What does this mean for the HR role and the HR function in the UK now and moving forward? I'm going to take a step back, by the way, and talk about the HR function in general. Apparently, I was informed people like my speeches because they're forthright, candid, and then it was slipped in at the end, brutal. So here we go. I do a lot of stuff and materials and talking about HR and talent, especially, by the way, in Central Europe and Russia, hold events there with my clients and so forth. But I look at the global HR and talent role and function, and I'll just tell you what I think, and I won't pull any punches. I think most companies, for the function, belittle it, keep it on the side, and do not see HR, the HR department, as a strategic key department within the company. I'm sorry to say that, but that's my experience. I think there's 2 of us in this room. We are almost a majority, yeah. By the way, in Russia, we would be the Bolsheviks, the others would be the Mensheviks. So, well, you put me off. No. I also see HR department function very much functional operation, not strategic, along with tax and legal. Sorry, that's pretty insulting, yeah? HR is on the same level as tax and legal. I think for many companies, but not all, by the way, I think those with best practice and who really understand it, get it right, and there are a minority, I would say 5–10% of my clients get HR right and put it more strategically within what we have. That's the background of what I see. What will Brexit and the demands I've just talked about mean for that function? There's 2 possibilities. One is perhaps good for HR function and one is not. The challenge is with this, hey, we've got less supply, demand we're not sure about, could be rising salaries. So that means the HR function has to go to the boss, the operational management, the CEO, and say, by the way, we think some salaries are going to rise. Now, that's a message they don't want to hear because that affects productivity and costs. What they want from your operational function is get us the staff, bring them in on Monday, make sure they're bloody talented, and make sure they're very cheap. That's the cynic in me, but I've been around for 28 years. I see somebody laughing and smiling in agreement, so there are 3 of us now. So we're getting there. What could happen now is companies, the bad news is they'll just say, look, the economy is going down, we've got massive HR uncertainty, because another point I need to make now, I'd love to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, for Brexit and HR, what you need to do is go to the government website, check on HR and talent management in the government website, and pick out, download form XL47/BDK-5. It's the pink form. And it tells you everything about Brexit, what the visas will be, what the costs will be on that, the timing, which countries and which groups of people and which levels you can employ them. When you go to get that form, though, the screen is blank, because that form, of course, does not exist. I'm not sure that it's going to exist for the next 6, 9, 18 months or so. So this is the whole point. We've got uncertainty about Brexit in general, but my God, we've got uncertainty about Brexit specifically. So in this environment of uncertainty, will senior management and HQ say, look, this is a challenging, uncertain time. HR, you've got a quick, fast, dirty operational function. Carry on doing it. And by the way, while you're doing that, can you cut costs even more and cut down the HR department? Because we're in trouble. Things are difficult. That's one possibility. And we'll see what happens. The second possibility is that the headquarters and CEO says, look, we have a big, functional, strategic HR problem for the next 3-5 years. We've got more uncertainty. Therefore, I need a very capable, very competent, very strategic HR function. I need to upgrade the quality of our HR department, bring in more people into the function, better people into the function, and then give them more responsibility and more strategic scope. That's one possibility. So I think those are the two options for HR moving forward in the United Kingdom. A bigger picture thing, consequence of Brexit, will Brexit accelerate the trend in robotification and artificial intelligence? Down the road, I think it will. I think short term, we're talking about what I just talked about. But one response might be, I can't get talent, I can't get enough EU talent, so why don't I employ more robots? And that will that will save me money as well. Oh, and I like that very, very much. As I say, I don't think we're going to robotification next week, next year, accelerated because of Brexit. But certainly, given the dilemmas and contradictions I've spoken about, it might be something to bear in mind. My answer here is maybe, maybe not. Another point on Brexit, do you buy more talent in, or do you build up your existing staff? Which is, wow, what a cliche that is for HR. But I really do think now, bringing in the externals, the EU people, with those visas, with the extra costs, yes, you will be doing that. But I think even more so now, looking at your internal talent that you have already. I think the other point about HR Brexit in the UK, of course, is the domestic pool of people. All the citizens and passport holders and residence holders within the United Kingdom. By the way, you know that they will be grandfathered, the 3.5 million EU citizens who are living here on various residency permits. They will be grandfathered this year, which is good news. By the way, of the 3.5 million, 600,000 are children, but still you've got 2.9 million there. By the way, that pool is a good pool. 2.9 million people to delve at, look at. I think there's going to be a lot of competition for those. In addition to those, the EU ones in Britain, as I say, I think you're going to be looking at all the Brits and resident holders in the United Kingdom, your pool here. Now, some of you may say, well, Danny, they're no good, or there are not enough of them, and we just need that EU talent or other foreign talent. The other thing as well, non-EU citizens coming in, you know how to do that. There are various systems. There's a sponsorship scheme at the moment. I think several of the existing schemes that we have for non-EU employees at the moment could be transferred to the EU ones moving forward. That might be a simple regulatory way to go about it. We have these systems and structures for non-EU employees. Why don't we simply put that into a system for the EU ones moving forward? I think that's a factor for sure. But I do think it's going to be very much a battle internally for companies about costs, about finding talent, and then eventually going through the administration and regulation for those people. I want to go, I'm just looking at my time of 10 minutes now. I tried to provide 5, 6 ideas there for talent. Just trying to check if I missed anything out really validly. No. I want to move now to best practice quickly for you, because the whole point about Brexit, looking at the HR issues, looking at the strategic picture of HR, if HR is to upgrade itself, then the HR department needs to know what the business is. I'm sorry, that's not meant to be as insulting as it might sound. But HR needs to understand the business and all the business challenges that we face, and there are many of them. And I'm sorry now, by the way, your colleagues at Unleash and I have all the documentation, very elegant, short, long reports about this with all the data. I'll be very quick. Brands. In your businesses, now this is really a cliche, and I'm going to get out of the cliche, brands are very important. But selling brands today, compared with 3 years ago or 10 years ago, is 3, 5, 10 times harder than it used to be. So yeah, the cliche about brands are fantastic and visionary. Yeah, I'll buy into that, but you've really got to work very, very hard, much harder, time, effort, energy, and your people. Your sales, marketing, and research people have to be better than they were 3 years ago, 10 years ago, to stand still in selling the brands and moving forward. And if the brands don't work 100%, I've seen upward innovation. You try and get a better price, you increase the quality, you increase the brand value, and you get more profit out of it. The ROI on that is getting more difficult. 4 years ago, 10 years ago, you provided upward innovation. It was great. You made a lot of money on it. It's much more difficult now. And I think downward innovation across the emerging markets, by the way, but by the way, there's a lot of countries in Europe that feel like emerging markets: Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, the United Kingdom. So affordable innovation, smaller packages, providing products and services at cheaper prices than you did in the past. Because, third point, would you believe your customer wants value for money? The client wants value for money. Now, there's a cliche. Probably when they built the pyramids, the pharaoh said, I want value for money. But he probably didn't, because he was using slave labor. Anyway, but that's the cliche. And it's increased and intensified since the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, and it's increasing every year that I'm in business. The consumer client wants value for money, and that can be the government, it can be companies, or it can be the end user buying detergent. And the challenge for companies is meeting that new consumer demand, by which you have, next point, you have to slice and dice your consumer analysis much more than in the past. If you had 10 KPIs for consumers 10 years ago, now you need 150. Next point, premium, mid, low discount. That's just 3 categories of sales and services. You need 50 of those. Sub-premium, upper lower middle sub-premium, and so on and so on. Premium survived by adapting and being affordable. Discount cheap does very well because everybody wants discount cheap. Another point for business thinking of you, mid-price, mid-brand is very tough, very challenging, and very difficult, globally and in Central Europe and Russia as well. Beiersdorf, who produce Nivea, say, Danny, you're absolutely right on mid-price, mid-brand, except Nivea. Nivea is mid-price, but it's also got a bit of brand in it, and that contradicts that cliche on that. Can you mix the price, the volume, the proposition on brand? Tweaking and mixing that is a complicated challenge. The other thing that I'm seeing around the world, promotions and discounts, certainly in retail and in consumer goods. But remember, most of your companies are either in that sector or they supply it. So 80% of my clients are impacted by that. Promotions and discounts are impacting retail, and that's why the retailers are burning and dying. And the retailers' relationships with your companies are tighter because the retailer's under pressure. So what do they want to do? They want to pass the pressure up to you on price, promotions and discounts, and route to market. So those are the challenges. I was speaking recently to the EMEA president, Europe president, of one of the top 5 consumer product companies in the world. He said to me, and I just want to throw this at you because it's part of this equation, the business model for global consumer products companies is no longer sustainable. Interesting little comment. The question is, will Procter & Gamble exist in 10 years' time? It certainly probably won't exist in the shape and form it's in now, but that applies to many of the companies. They're facing venture funds who want more and more, top line, bottom line. Did you know Nestle, Unilever, those kind of companies, they grow globally organic sales 2.5% per annum. I think that's very good, by the way, in this environment. But the venture funds do not think that. They want much more, and they want much more profitability. When you've got the consumer that's changed, they want value. You've got retail, you've got own label, you've got discounts, you've got promotions. Put all that together, and you've got massive pressure from this end, the consumer end, and from the investor end as well. Also, this executive said to me, he said, Danny, e-commerce. We all love e-commerce, don't we? But he said e-commerce wiped out 15% of our business in China in 5 years. 15% in 5 years, and we'll never get it back. And of course, that's coming back. That will flow and develop into Europe and into the United Kingdom, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. I always like to, other aspects of business, which I think are very important. And again, I think HR should always be looking at these things because this is what your managers and your boards are always looking at as well. Providing solutions. You're not providing a product or a one-night stand product. Buy this, take it, thanks, bye-bye. You want to build a relationship with your customers and partners and move forward in that. And providing solutions and after-sales services is a key element of doing that. I like to joke with my clients, and my clients joke back to me. I was doing a board presentation yesterday morning in London. And luckily the CEO wasn't there, but the rest of the board was, so we could make lots of jokes about the CEO. Now, when your CEO arrives in London from the US or somewhere, you've got your 200 slides to present to him. First slide is, welcome, sir, to London. Sorry about the weather. The second slide is key, because on the third slide, usually a he will fall asleep, because he's jet-lagged and he's not interested and he's tired, and he drank too much the night before. So slide number 2 is critical, yeah? That's the one where you want to do it. And now what we say, on slide number 2, you should have digitization, e-commerce, and efficient growth. And he looks at that and goes, good, I like it. Digitization, we must do that. No idea what it is, but I know we talk about it in the board a lot. So digitization, e-commerce also, efficient growth, I love it. Growth, I like growth. Efficient, productivity, low cost, tightening. Marvelous. The other thing we joke about, if you don't want to use that slide as slide number 2 can be localization, diversification, and efficient growth. By the way, you notice there's one common denominator, efficient growth. Because then he looks at that, just like I said, and he says, I am happy, and he falls asleep. So then you click the button for the 200 slides, and the presentation is finished. So remember that. However, what should be on those slides for your businesses, all of you in this room, I think, Brexit is going into a difficult patch. We don't know how difficult. It's come out of a difficult patch, not much come out of a difficult patch. The rest of the world is having a better 18-month period, by the way, and I follow that very closely. But the outlook is for tough times on the corporate world moving forward. And a key element when things are bad, when things are moderate, and when things are good are market share. I've not used the word before. I just said it, so I want to say it again. Market share, and I'll say it a third time to be boring, market share. Market share is critical. If you can capture market share, you can dictate price, you can dictate the market when the market changes and adapt. The managing director of Procter & Gamble, he's retired many years ago, my friend, Herbert Schmidt, said, Danny, never flush market share down the toilet because of 1 quarter or 2 quarters financial results, because it can take years or never to recapture that market share. The trouble is, when you put market share on the slide for your CEO, he goes, what's market share? Why market share? Where's my efficient growth? What's wrong with the market? Why do I have to have a share of it? Where's the growth? We're going to grow efficiently, top line, bottom line. Market share, you're suggesting some problems, and I don't like problems. Then he would stay awake for the rest of your slides, and that's not good. But seriously, market share is critical in a serious business conversation. I think all these points, I wanted to do 5 or 6 points on HR in Brexit specifically, which I did. But I think these other points, business, are extremely relevant to all your business, therefore to HR and the function. Because if we do go the route of being more strategic moving forward, then HR, I don't mean to be patronizing, then HR needs to know about all these business factors and be able to engage in the debate. And the question is, I've mentioned, I think, 12 points there, but, what is the HR effect, consequence, function of what I've just said in all those points? And as I say, I think it's to do with, what are your brand people? By the way, another thing, sorry, I've got a couple more minutes. E-commerce is fine, exciting and sexy, as I said, but what does it mean for key account managers? What does it mean for your omni-channel approach to business? It really raises lots and lots of questions. I think e-commerce is it's critically important. It's the future of the future. But my God, operationally, bureaucratically, and HR point of view, it will be an issue. Another point, I'm sorry, this is something you all know. Everybody in the world wants a digitization e-commerce strategy. Therefore, everybody needs the people to run it, yeah? So 90% of the companies in the world are running around to find the technical geeks who can do it for you. You need also the technical people, those two guys with spectacles. What a patronizing comment. The two guys with spectacles in the cupboard with their laptops doing all your IT and technical and digitization for you, for sure. You need those two guys. By the way, one of them could be a woman. You need those two, but you also need people who can look at e-commerce strategically within the business as well. And that's a challenge. Finding these people, I don't need to tell most of you, I imagine, is extremely difficult, and/or it's just expensive. Of course you can find them. They're out there. You just have to pay very large amounts of money for the very good ones. I have a great friend of mine, Guvench Domnez. He's the managing director of Domino Pizza in Russia. They've done a fantastic business on e-commerce in Russia, fastest growing Domino pizzas in the world. They've done an IPO and everything. They made mistakes at the start, getting the wrong people. They brought in people from headquarters to do their e-commerce strategy in Russia. The guy came in, 4 or 5 months, disrupted everything, destroyed everything, left, and cross-charged them a very large bill. Then they got their own people in, they worked hard, went through some more mistakes and developed it. Guvench calls Domino Pizza, he says, we are an IT company that sells pizzas. And I think that's a very, very good description of his business and what they do. So you can make a very good success of it indeed. I think one of the, closing off now for the last 2 minutes, and God forbid that previous speakers or future speakers coming forward after me, with this uncertainty we have, I tried to be more practical on my thoughts about HR in the United Kingdom. One of the problems is, because like you, I've looked at all the literature, I've underlined the uncertainty. I've seen some articles on the internet about what you should do with HR and Brexit, and it starts off and it says, communicate. Very good. Engage. Yeah, very good, very good. Incentivize. If you've got the money, very, very good. But to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, it sounds like a lot of platitudes. However, of course, I go along with the communicate and engage. It's a cliche and a platitude, but at the moment, that's the thing. I think very stark honesty and constant communication engagement. By the way, and saying to your staff, we haven't got a clue what's going on, and when we do, we'll let you know. But continuing to do that and answering these questions and trying to come up, because there are some answers to some practicalities already about the EU citizens who'll be grandfathered here, etc. Whether companies have know their strategy and say, yeah, we'll move very much on domestic people, yes, we'll pay the extra cost for visas and regulations to get more EU people. I think that debate is continuing in companies at the moment. But my final closing point is, a little tip and advice after almost 30 years in business, is, and this is very softy, lovey-dovey, and I make the ironic remark, it almost sounds as it's coming from HR. rather than finance. It's relationships. The key to success in your business now, in the past, moving forward, in the developed markets and in the emerging markets of the world is relationships, partnerships, and trust. Now, really, I'm sorry, they are so softy, lovey-dovey phrases, I feel almost embarrassed. But I know from my personal experience in building business, I've been working with some clients for 30 years. 30 years. Baker McKenzie, Ernst & Young, and some other of my 400 clients. By the way, one individual at Baker McKenzie is my key account, is my key client, 27 years, personally. Forget with the law firm, personally as well. If you can retain relationships long-term, and if you can go through the bad and good times together, any partner can be good when it's sunny and everybody's growing at 10, 15%. The days of organic growth at 10, 15% are gone forever for 95% of companies. And it will either be a very British weather, downpouring, or grey and drizzly. And what is your business relationship with your partners then? And to finish off on this theme of relationships, my other piece of cliched advice, and I've run out of time, and I don't like to go over for the organizers, but to finish off, when you're managing your businesses, doing all this with Brexit, moving forward with the challenges, always remember this. It cut me. Okay. Never, I'll only be one more minute. Never cut costs too deeply that you damage relations with your customers. Never cut costs too deeply that you damage relationships with your distributors, suppliers, and partners. And never cut costs so deeply that you damage relationships with your talent and employees. Because you're going to need all of those, in the years post-Brexit moving forward. I think that's the key, the best piece of advice I can give you on relationships and not being over-aggressive in cost cuts. Just to finish off, I think, sadly, 90% of companies don't follow my advice there, what I gave you at the end. And I hope that will be something to take home and to tell your CEO and bosses and just give it to them right in the face and just tell them. And when you're looking for a job, I'll try and help you. All good luck, good fortune. Thank you.